Welcome to the Coaches Hub podcast, where great coaching comes to life. Today, we're exploring the player-centered approach, putting the player at the heart of every decision, drill, and discussion. We'll cover how to tailor sessions to individual needs, foster autonomy, build confidence, and create an environment where players thrive on and off the pitch. When players own their development, performance and resilience soar. Let's get into it.
Welcome to another deep dive. Today we're tackling a really fascinating shift in how we approach talent development, especially, in the fast-paced world of soccer coaching. If you've ever felt that, traditional coaching methods sometimes fall a bit short, maybe, in truly developing a player's full potential, then this deep dive is definitely for you. We're exploring the player-centered approach. Our mission today is to move beyond the buzzwords, really unpack this powerful concept. We want to understand why it's not just like a nice idea, but an essential shift for modern sport, and how it genuinely elevates both individual and team performance, unlocking a player's long-term success. We'll be drawing insights from player-centered soccer coaching, empowering players for success, which is a fantastic resource, really makes the case for this philosophy. So let's start with a fundamental question. What exactly is a player-centered approach? And how does it fundamentally challenge the traditional ways of coaching we might be used to?
Well, you hit on it right away. Traditional coaching often prioritizes, the coach's tactical vision. Players are almost treated like pieces on a chessboard, just sort of executing preset instructions. The player-centered approach, it flips that on its head completely. It shifts the entire focus squarely onto the individual player, their unique needs, their aspirations, and their holistic development. The core belief is that players aren't just passive recipients of information, they're active agents in their own learning journey. This approach acknowledges that every single player steps onto the field with distinct strengths, weaknesses, different learning styles, different motivations too. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all instruction manual.
Okay, so if the player's really at the heart of it, the ultimate goal then is to empower them.
Right.
To genuinely take ownership of their own learning.
Exactly.
And this fosters, a much deeper intrinsic motivation. It sharpens their decision-making, ignites creativity, stuff you just don't see as often with the more rigid methods. Mm-hmm. It builds confidence and autonomy, leading to these well-rounded athletes who are not just physically skilled, but mentally agile too. This all sounds pretty ideal, but I can hear coaches thinking, how on earth do I actually do this? How do I implement this personalized approach when I've got, say, 20 players on a team?
Yeah, that's a fair question, and that's where personalized coaching becomes a true cornerstone. But it's actually more manageable than it might sound. It really begins with the coach committing to truly getting to know each player deeply. And this isn't just about their technical ability on the ball. It's about understanding their personality, what genuinely motivates them, their learning preferences, like are they visual, auditory, do they need to do it, kinesthetic. Coaches gain this understanding through, consistent one-on-one conversations, focused feedback sessions after training or maybe after games, and very deliberate observation during drills and matches. You're looking for those little cues, body language, the questions they ask, their reactions.
Right, and what's fascinating there is how that depth of understanding allows for really precise adaptation. So, for example, if you have a visual learner, maybe they're struggling with defensive positioning. You might use cones maybe to create a sort of physical force field they can literally see.
Guiding their movement.
Exactly. Or for an auditory learner,
you might use rhythmic verbal cues like step, slide, plant, something like that.
Precisely. And that simple act, just tailoring an explanation or a drill, it makes players feel genuinely seen, valued. And that builds a much stronger coach-player relationship based on trust, which in turn unlocks even more potential.
Okay, that focus on individual learning styles makes a lot of sense for skill acquisition, definitely. But what about decision-making? In the actual chaos of a game, how does the player-centered approach empower players to think on their feet when the stakes are high, rather than just sort of waiting for instructions from the sideline? Here's where it gets really interesting.
Right, exactly. This ownership of decision-making, it doesn't just build confidence. It profoundly enhances their creativity and their problem-solving skills right there on the fly. It's less about the coach telling them the single right answer and much more about creating scenarios where they discover it for themselves. A key technique here is something called the constraint-led approach, part of that.
Yeah, manipulating the environment, right.
Precisely. So instead of just running generic drills, coaches manipulate the training environment, maybe the rules, the space, the number of players, and these constraints naturally force specific decision-making scenarios. For instance, in a 2v1 situation, you might say, okay, a goal only counts if it's a first-time shot. That immediately pushes players to evaluate options, consider the consequences, and choose the best course of action under pressure.
So by consistently practicing decision-making in these dynamic sort of game-like scenarios, players are just far better prepared for real game situations where, let's face it, quick thinking is absolutely essential. It helps them develop what some people call adaptive expertise.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's a good term for it.
The ability to innovate and problem solve when facing new situations instead
Right.
of just, executing preset plays.
Exactly. And that is such a crucial skill at higher levels of competition. It really distinguishes players who can truly impact a game from those who are just, following a script. Now, to allow players to truly embrace this level of decision-making, this self-discovery, creating a genuinely supportive environment is absolutely vital, non-negotiable, really. Players need to feel completely safe to express themselves, safe to take risks, try new things, and yes, safe to make mistakes. Because when players know they can fail without that fear of harsh judgment, they're just much more likely to experiment, to push their boundaries, and ultimately to grow. It's about fostering psychological safety.
And the coach's role here is pivotal, isn't it? It's about providing constructive feedback. But feedback that isn't just about what went wrong. It highlights both the positive aspects of performance and the areas for improvement, always framing it as a learning opportunity.
Right. Constructive, not destructive.
Yeah, and the focus shifts squarely onto effort, progress, creativity, rather than just the end result, the scoreline. This is where inquiry-based questioning comes in, I suppose. Instead of saying, you should have passed there, the coach might ask.
Okay, what did you see in that moment? Or what other options did you consider?
Exactly. That encourages players to take ownership of their learning journey. It's their thought process.
And building on that, a player-centered environment also actively fosters collaboration within the team itself. It encourages players to communicate, to share their ideas, and crucially, to learn from each other. When players feel empowered to contribute their unique insights, it really strengthens team chemistry. And it reinforces the idea that every single player, regardless of their role or maybe their perceived skill level, has something valuable to contribute to the collective goal, which, this raises a genuinely important question. How do you build a team that thrives on that kind of shared responsibility, not just relying on individual brilliance?
So we've covered technical skills, strategic decision-making. But this approach seems to go even deeper. A player-centered approach also places a very strong emphasis on emotional and psychological development, which, let's be honest, is often overlooked in more traditional setups.
Absolutely. Massively overlooked sometimes. It highlights the critical importance of things like mental resilience, self-confidence, emotional intelligence, all crucial for a player's growth. Coaches adopting this mindset actively help players manage the immense pressure of competition. They help build self-belief even after setbacks and channel their emotions, both good and bad, productively. This can involve practical tools like encouraging players to reflect on their performances, maybe through journaling, or setting personal process-oriented goals, not just outcome goals. Even simple check-ins before and after training just to gauge their emotional state, nurturing this inner game, helping players build that mental muscle to handle challenges, stay motivated. It prepares them not just for the next match, but really for the broader challenges of life itself.
Okay, so we've outlined these key pillars: the personalization, the autonomy, the support, the emotional growth. But is this a static system? Is it like set in stone once you implement it?
No, not at all. That's a really important point. The very nature of this approach is dynamic. It requires ongoing reflection and adaptation, constant tweaking.
So as players evolve, as the team dynamics shift, the coaching methods have to evolve too.
Exactly. It has to be fluid. It's an iterative process, really. Coaches need to regularly assess their own methods, actively listen to player feedback, and I mean truly listen, not just nod along, and remain genuinely open to making adjustments to better serve their players' evolving needs. This isn't just like a survey once a season.
Right.
It's asking players in the moment, hey, what's working for you? What do you enjoy? Where do you feel you need more support? That input is invaluable. It should directly modify training sessions, how you design drills, even your communication techniques. The player-centered approach truly thrives when both players and coaches are committed to this shared journey, this partnership of continuous improvement and growth.
Okay, so to sort of recap our deep dive today, the player-centered approach Fundamentally, it's about placing the player right at the very heart of the learning experience, creating an environment where they don't just develop skills, but they can actually flourish as individuals, both on and off the field.
Exactly. And this is achieved by, well, deeply personalizing the coaching, truly empowering players to make their own decisions on the pitch, fostering a really safe and supportive atmosphere where mistakes are okay, they're part of learning, and prioritizing their emotional and psychological growth just as much as their physical and technical abilities.
Yeah, ultimately, this philosophy ensures players not only develop perhaps exceptional technical abilities, but also grow mentally, emotionally, psychologically, preparing them not just for the challenges of soccer, whatever level they play, but for life itself, which is huge. So as you consider this really powerful philosophy, here's maybe a final provocative thought for you to mull over. How might you adapt your own approach, whether you're a coach, a player, a parent, even in your own life, to empower yourself, or maybe those around you, to truly take ownership of their own development and success, to find that intrinsic drive to master whatever challenge comes next?
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Coaches Hub podcast. Remember, a player-centered approach isn't just about improving performance, it's about empowering players to think, decide, and grow for themselves. When we put players at the heart of the process, we help them become not only better footballers, but stronger people. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a fellow coach, subscribe for more insights, and explore our full library of resources at www.soccer-profile.com. Until next time, keep learning, keep evolving, and keep putting players first.